$20, but actually only cost $10. And yet, at this time of year, it seems a little hard to keep going. Like, sometimes we just kind of flop to Christmas. Like, we've spent the whole month of December kind of doing stuff. And we get to Christmas and we're just like, thank goodness it's over. Thank goodness it's here. It's hard to keep going. Even on a year like this one, where we're so desperate to have a good Christmas, sometimes it feels like there's just not going to be enough spirit of Christmas to get us there, right? Sometimes you just can't conjure up enough joy to get you through what this kind of time of year demands of us. And I'm not trying to be all like Scroogey here or anything. I really do love Christmas, but here's the thing. Sometimes it feels like there's just nothing underneath it. Like we're celebrating celebration or something like that. We'll all put on a happy face. We'll be on our best behavior. We'll carefully steer the conversation away from politics or, anything remotely contentious, because we must have a good time. Why? Because we've got to. But friends, if we're honest, that can feel like the worst of play acting sometimes, can't it? A few years back, I was walking through South Point over here. It was Christmas time. There were kids coming up to get their kind of photos with Santa. And there was this one family, and they looked miserable. This group of 4 boys kind of wandered up to Santa, and one of them was not having it. His mum had snatched his Nintendo DS or 2DS away from him. And she yelled at him as he kind of was standing there snarling, "You smile for this photo or you'll ruin Grandma's Christmas." That's crazy, right? That's kind of celebrating. That's what celebration can be like sometimes. It's like Wile E. Coyote running up a stairway made of smoke. Sooner or later, he's going to come crashing down. Because there's darkness at this time of year, right? Celebration can't banish it. Quite apart from COVID, 160,000 people this year died in Australia. 160,000. That's 160,000 tables where there's going to be an empty seat. And that'll be your experience for some of you this year. The celebration will still smack a bit from the sadness. We all know it's not meant to be like this. But celebrating celebration doesn't seem to expel it. It can't bring you lasting happiness. It can't implant peace in you. No, what we need is tidings of comfort and joy. Tidings, I don't know if you knew this, the word tidings just means news. We need news of comfort and joy. A news that overrides the mess. And boy, do we have some good news today in that passage that Michael read to us just before. If you've got your little piece of paper, have it on your lap and just look along with me. I want to show you some of it. You've got that passage there. Let's have a look at sentence 2, because sentence 2 gives us a really helpful baseline, okay, that we can build up from. All right, sentence 2. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light, and on those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. Here's the first thing this passage wants us to reckon with. This is the diagnosis that we need. The world is in darkness. That's what this passage says. In fact, it's one of the foundational messages of the whole Bible. This is complicated for us to get because in Australia, when we celebrate Christmas, it's hot, right? Like this is what it's like. But many of you, or some of you, will have experienced kind of Northern Hemisphere Christmases as well, where it's gloomy and dark and awful. And you get to Christmas and you're just like, thank goodness it's here. How is the world in darkness? Well, throughout the Bible, the word darkness is a metaphor. It's kind of a code word for 2 different things. Darkness points to evil and it points to ignorance. We get the bad stuff happens in the shadows, right? Violence, injustice, corruption, oppression, these things fester in dark places. The sin that seems to grip us most profoundly is the stuff that's hidden, that no one else knows about. Where the light doesn't get down. But also, evil has a way of casting a shadow too, doesn't it? In Isaiah's day, there was an evil empire to the north. God's people were facing the very real prospect of genocide. of their entire nation being rubbed out. Chapter 9 verse 1 says that there's gloom. There's gloom. But there's another way this world is in the dark. No one knows how to cure us, how to fix us, how to vaccinate us against evil and suffering in this world. No one knows. We're all ignorant of it. The paragraph before the one that we read today, we find out that the people in their day, faced with a kind of genocide coming, a menace to the north, they were consulting clairvoyants, they were consulting fortune tellers. They would listen to anyone who seemed confident and had answers about how to get out of this mess. But Isaiah is saying that that's about as smart as being in a group of people in a cave and having one torch and dropping it, and then just listening to the person who has the loudest voice. What does confidence matter when you're in the dark? Confidence counts for nothing when you're all blind. We do the same thing today. Some of us believe that the market will fix all our problems. Some of us believe that the state will fix all our problems. Others of us, well, actually all of us, trust tech to sort us all out. But that's nonsense. The market has never managed it. The state is constantly letting us down. And tech talks a big game, but doesn't it always create more problems as well? It seems to create new and frustrating complications, right? We're in the dark. Our only hope is light. And where does the light come from? Well, the answer to that question comes in sentences 6 and 7. They're probably the best known sentences in this chapter because of Handel's Messiah. I reckon some of you, as it was being read, were probably singing that in your head. For unto us a child is born. For unto us a child is born. The child is the source of light. He's the one who brings it. And who is this child? Well, he'll be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This is insane because those are descriptions of God. And yet he is born. Never forget the ridiculousness of the incarnation. Phenomenal cosmic powers. Any penny living space. There is nothing like this in any other religion or any other philosophy. Sure, Zeus and Apollos apparently came down in human form to walk among the people, but not like this, not as a child. No God would submit themselves to 9 months in the womb of a woman, followed by years of someone else wiping their bottom. That is fabulously, hilariously wonderful. Otherworldly light dawning in a manger. This is so much better than celebrating celebration. God has come down, a light from the outside, sent darkness to flight. Let me suggest a few things that this means. Firstly, the King is the mighty and ever-living God, everlasting Father. Jesus doesn't come first and foremost as our example. He didn't come to show us how to be nicer to one another. He didn't come to inspire us. No, friends, Jesus is the unveiling of the all-powerful God of heaven and earth. To the extent that we see him, we see what God is like. No one around in Jesus' day listened to him and thought, wow, he makes me want to live a better life. No, either they rejected him in fury or they knelt before him and worshipped him. But Jesus isn't just the mighty and everlasting, he's also the wonderful counselor and the Prince of Peace. That is, he is exactly the kind of God you'd want to follow. Why is Jesus called a counselor? Well, if you've ever gone through difficult things, it can be great to talk about it with someone who's gone down the same path, yeah? Who knows what you've been going through. If Jesus is God come down, then we have something that no other religion, no other philosophy could ever give you. God understands the inside of your experience. It's not just that he looks from afar and sympathizes. No, God powerfully, because our God has suffered. Our God has had to be courageous. Our God knows what it is to be abandoned by his friends, thumped by injustice, tortured and humiliated. He is your wonderful counselor.